6 of the NFL season is upon us, and we're so excited for our pick'em and predictions this week. We're not going to waste any time. Make sure you guys leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more. Thank you so much. We just hit 1,000 subs, and let's jump right into this video today here, Austin. Super excited to brag about Austin's record again. It's kind of the weekly routine we got going on here. Austin 53-25, no surprise. He's cruising well over 67% win percentage this year. And you can tell I'm a little bit of a basketball guy. 45-33. That might get me the 8th seed or the 7th seed in the Western Conference this year, but it's not going to do me very well in pick'em here against Austin, guys. So if you see Austin's picks and they differentiate with mine, don't follow Glasses guy, okay? Go with the other dude. Let's jump forward now into our Thursday night game this week. First, we have 2 bye week teams to talk about, and they're 2 historic franchises. The Steelers, Sports Junkie, if you're out there, I know you're watching this video, shout out to you and some of those other Steelers fans we got. And then also the Packers. So we got 2 really great teams historically on bye this week, have a little bit of time to get right and kind of motivate themselves going forward in the season. Let's jump forward now into that Thursday night game I alluded to. And well, Denver, it's just going to continue pouring on here as Kansas City will be hosting the Denver Broncos this week on Thursday night. And Austin, the Chiefs have been playing really, really good. They're on a 4-game win streak right now. Of course, lost in the opener this season against the Lions, but since then they've been playing really good football. There's been a lot of controversy about, are they getting a lot of benefit of the doubt calls from the refs right now in terms of pass interferences? Of course, we had the play in the end zone where the defensive back took his helmet off. What's kind of your thoughts on that whole scenario? And then why did the Chiefs wall up the Broncos this week?
Yeah, it's kind of tough because a lot of those seem so coincidental, but at the end of the day, it seems very intentional on some of those calls. But at the end of the day, we can only control what we can control as, fans of the game and just observing. And we hold no power in it. But the Kansas City Chiefs are in a lot of games. They're super competitive, they're tough, they're gritty, and they know how to win close games. Some of that by benefit of the officiating, but at the end of the day, there are other calls missed in the course of the game that people don't talk about. But when you look at Denver, what a catastrophic start to the season. I think when you look at this organization top to bottom, there has to be some changes made. And they thought they got it right with Sean Payton. And now this has been a disastrous start, unfortunately. They have some pieces to move if they feel that they need to blow it up by the trade deadline, which is something I actually foresee them potentially doing, because once again, another loss here is going to just really put them behind the 8 ball. I don't have a ton of confidence in Denver.
Yeah, we will have some trade videos potentially coming out here on the channel within the next couple weeks or so stay tuned for those. Obviously, tough look for Denver and Sean Payton after calling out Nathaniel Hackett this offseason. He ends up losing to Nathaniel Hackett and the New York Jets this past week. The Broncos just have not been very good this year. They've had their share of struggles. And let's jump into our Sunday slate of games now, where, again, there's a lot of good action this week in the NFL. And we'll start off with the Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Titans. Look, the Titans, they've been up and down. They've had some awesome moments this year where, I've kind of been a doubter, and they end up having some great football games. And then there's also been those moments where you're like, yeah, you can kind of see the writing on the wall that this team isn't necessarily what we've been used to seeing about Tennessee. Austin, for that reason, Baltimore feels like a really safe pick here. Likely no Odell Beckham Jr. From my understanding, of course, J.K. Dobbins has missed pretty much the entire year. Tough situation for Baltimore, but still they're a good football team. And yes, they struggle with drops this most recent week, but when you have number 8 and Lamar Jackson, you're going to have opportunities to win football games. That's what I foresee happening here. What do you like about Baltimore in this one?
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at Lamar Jackson's historical win percentage during the regular season, he's towards the very top of that echelon of quarterbacks in terms of a team stat. But at the end of the day, they win games with him at the position, regardless of the situation that's around him. The running game is something that they're still trying to work out with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. The wide receiver position, Zay Flowers has looked great all season, minus last game. He had some concentration drops that were shocking. I believe they had 7 in totality between Rashad Bateman and Flowers and Aguilar. That was a tough game to watch if you're a Baltimore Ravens fans. There's a lot of opportunities to win that game. Some of those are game changing, more specifically Rashad Bateman in the middle of the end zone. That's one he should have had. But regardless of that, I think when you look at the roster top to bottom, they're super talented. Tennessee has some issues. They can defend the run very well, but something that they struggle with is generating offense. Why? Because they just aren't prolific enough through the passing game, which has been, somewhat of a concern for them. But to me, I still like Baltimore in this one. I like the talent on this team, and Lamar Jackson wins football games historically.
From a fantasy perspective, Austin, you brought up Justice Hill. Let's talk about him for a second. How playable is he in a fantasy, standard full point PPR league right now? Would you flex him? Is he at all someone you would consider starting potentially?
Yeah, he's a tough call. He's a borderline flex guy. I just don't have a ton of confidence. I was a former Justice Hill owner, and during that first week of waiver wire, I actually ended up getting him instead of Kyron Williams. That was not a good outcome there. So at the end of the day, unfortunately, I don't know if he's a startable player moving forward.
Yeah, just had to get that on video here because I actually did start Justice Hill this week, Austin, in our Dynasty League. So I just wanted to make sure that my lineup wasn't very startable. I just had to get that in video here. Jump forward now into the next video, or into the next the game here. We got the Commanders taking on the Falcons. And look, the Falcons, they just play competitive football. You kind of ranted about this last week. The Falcons play a fun style. Kyle Pitts, talking about fantasy, he finally scored over 10 points in what it feels like the first time in 3 years in the NFL. And the Falcons, they do have this really interesting set of skill position players. They recently made a trade for Van Jefferson. They'll add him into the mix in what was a pick swap toward the end of the draft. I like that get for them. Austin, why do you like the Falcons here over the Commanders? They've been a little shaky themselves. Kind of what's your thoughts on this game as you analyze it?
Maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment, but I just can't wash away the thoughts of the Commanders versus the Chicago Bears, which seemingly a lot of people were picking them in pick'em. They were at home. They had the Bears, who were just in a free fall in terms of, falling down the standings. And looking at it here, I don't know if I have a ton of confidence. I know you're a big Arthur Smith truther. I mean, you love the guy, you love his play calling, and I think there's reason to be excited. Desmond Ridder is a quarterback that I'm still trying to figure out what he is, but I'm just not sure that I have a ton of confidence in this Commanders team. And of course, every single time I either bench Terry McLaurin in fantasy or start him, I get burned either way. It doesn't matter. I can't ever start the guy with him producing, more than 10 fantasy points seemingly. So at the end of the day, I'm picking the Falcons. I'm sticking with it. They're in Atlanta. Give me the Falcons.
One thing to really like about this matchup, if you are picking Atlanta, they're 3-0 at home this year. They're 0-2 on the road. So that home field advantage, we talk about it pretty much every single week. And on a game-to-game basis, it does mean a lot. And I think Atlanta's taken advantage of that home field so far. They're going to look to continue to do that here against Washington. Our next game, we look at a matchup here between the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. And Austin, I'm pretty shocked, to be honest, to see the Vikings under your name here on the graphic. Neither of us, I don't think we're inspired to pick Minnesota. In fact, I'm a little concerned Kirk Cousins might not be on the roster by this time Sunday to play the actual game. So I'm not even sure here how I feel about this Minnesota pick. I don't want to pick Chicago. They're coming off a nice win that you mentioned earlier, but it just kind of scares me picking the Vikings. Justin Jefferson to IR as well. There's some concerns. TJ Hawkinson has not played up to that contract he signed this offseason. How reluctant were you here to pick the Vikings in this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is more so about the lack of confidence in Chicago than the confidence I have in the Minnesota Vikings at this point. I had a lot of people clowning me, saying at week 2 that I do not have confidence in this team. So I will remember that, everyone. But at the end of the day, this is a team that has to go on a run. This is the playable stretch in the schedule where they can rattle off some wins. Starting it off with Chicago here, they can really continue to steamroll that moving forward. Tough loss against Kansas City last week, but Minnesota's got to figure it out offensively. I mean, they keep turning over the ball, and it's really frustrating. We talked about it all week, and then all of a sudden, the first play from scrimmage there going to Josh Oliver, he fumbles immediately. So there's clearly some issues. They're in every single game. They just have to clean up the turnovers against a team like Chicago, which maybe they got some dog in them. I don't know, but I sure as heck don't really think it's going to be this week. But I'm just waiting for Bears fans to clip me here and put it on, some edit pages later.
The tough thing for me here with picking Minnesota is, although I did end up picking them, it's hard to feel confident in them like you kind of talked about, Austin. They've been in a lot of close games, and they're not really against a lot of great teams. Look, against the Chiefs, that's understandable. I don't even think we're holding that loss against them too heavily. It's just the year they haven't looked that good, and it's kind of a regression to the mean from last year, where they won all of these close games, ended up winning double-digit games, and then ended up losing in the first round of the playoffs. We're kind of seeing the inverse of that this year, where they're in all those close games, but the ball just doesn't bounce their way toward the end of it. the refs throw the flag on the wrong play for them, and all of a sudden they lose. And that's kind of the nature of when you're playing one score possession games week in, week out. You risk losing a bunch of those because you're in high leverage moments all the time. And I think Minnesota here, they're going to find themselves in that type of situation against Chicago. I'm picking for them to have the moments go right for them this week. But again, with the possibility of trades and this roster maybe getting torn apart a little bit as well, which there are some rumors, we'll see how this kind of plays out on Sunday. Let's jump forward now to our next matchup. We see one here between the New York Giants and the Buffalo Bills. And, well, no surprise to me that the Bills lost last week, Austin. You know how strongly I felt in that pick, but they typically don't lose two in a row. The Bills are super talented. They have a great coaching staff, a lot of talent on that roster. And kind of earlier in the year after the loss to the Jets, we pointed to a likely bounce back win in which I believe they put up 48 points the next week. I think I'm going to see something similar here. Maybe not 48 points, but they're going to score the football. I'm looking at a 35-plus point performance from the Bills this upcoming week, where they just have a really nice showing and kind of reinsert themselves into the real contenders category when everyone's talking about NFL football. The Giants have not played very well this year. I don't think there's a surprise about that. Their offensive line's been poor. Austin, what do you kind of think the spread should look like here? Obviously, we're picking money line, but how big would you expect the Bills to win this one possibly?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at spreads, I think this is probably, this is likely going to be a 10-point win or more. So I'd actually hit the over if it's, in that realm. I'm kind of curious to see what the actual line is for this one, but Buffalo should win this one in a big way just because I have a lot of confidence in their offense, and the New York Giants have been abysmal in a lot of different ways. They've dealt with injuries. There's a lot of inconsistency across the entire roster, offensively, defensively. They just can't put it together like they had last year, where they were so dialed in, especially towards the end of the season. They win a playoff game on the road. New York, once again, if we want to talk about teams that are regressing to the mean, this is exactly it. We did not believe in them that much last year, and now we're starting to see that come down to earth a little bit. You give these defensive coordinators another year to figure out this offense, and there's some real issues here. They need another big-time playmaker, in my opinion, especially on the perimeter, in order for them to take another step forward, with the whole Daniel Jones experiment.
They definitely have some work to do. As we get into the next game, make sure you guys do subscribe to the channel for more. Again, so thankful that we're over 1,000 subs now on this channel. But here we are, Seattle Seahawks. They head into Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. And as Jamar Chase said a couple weeks ago, he is always open. And he showed that against the Arizona Cardinals with a monster day, 3 touchdowns, way too many yards and catches to count. He was just fantastic in that one. And I'm going to look at that as a building block for this team going forward. They're going to continue to get him the football. They move him all over the field. I think he's going to be a real weapon in this one again. Seattle, of course, is going to do a lot of game planning for him, but I'm not sure if it matters. Jamar Chase is just that talented of a wide receiver. I like him a lot in this matchup still against Seattle, who, yes, they have a really good secondary, a lot of talented young corners. But Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, they have the chemistry. They've been doing it together for years and years and years. I think they're going to be really good in this one. Austin, why do you like the Seahawks here?
Yeah, I struggle a little bit with Cincinnati still unable to protect Joe Burrow at a consistent level. And I think the Seattle Seahawks, this is another test here. Them going on the road and beating a team that's trying to find their way in Cincinnati. I can't remember the last time that I picked Cincinnati, or I did not pick Cincinnati and you did. That probably extends back to Andy Dalton's prime, if I'm going to be completely honest. So looking at this is a shocking pick that I actually didn't side with you. But I think Seattle has some real capabilities of disrupting, the passing game. They have good cover corners, and that matches strength on strength. And hopefully for Seattle's sake, being able to run the football effectively is the key to victory for me in this game. Despite them being on the road, having to go to Cincinnati, I actually do like the Seahawks for once.
All right, so our next game now is the San Francisco 49ers as they head into Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Browns. And look, this is one of the easiest picks of the week. And now that I say that, the Browns will probably come out of nowhere and win. But this isn't anything against Cleveland or the Browns. They have a really good team. They've got a lot of pass rush. They're a really good football team. At times this year, they've shown that. At times they haven't. Team that's been super consistent, the San Francisco 49ers. 42-10 win over the Dallas Cowboys. It wasn't particularly close. Had Micah Parsons in his feelings after, and Deebo Samuel feels really confident with the team kind of backing that up as well in an interview later in the week after that game. Look, the Niners are just really, 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 really good at football. They're 5-0. Austin, we could rave on and on about this team. How good are they? Are they like an actual Super Bowl contender? Are they a team that you could see hoisting the Lombardi later this year?
So they have the culmination of what makes a championship football team. They have a really good defensive line that gets after the quarterback, tremendous play across the offensive line. They're opportunistic on the perimeter with guys like Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and you look at a very stout running game with Christian McCaffrey, all of which is the formula for winning football games because they don't turn it over thanks to Brock Purdy, which who really thought at this point in the year we'd be praising him so much? A lot of people are saying last year was a fluke. They didn't have enough film on him. And now what is the excuse? What are people going to say? At first, I was skeptical too, but now you look at it, he just wins football games. He takes care of it. He's accurate with the football, all of which are the culmination of being a great football team, which they've been so far. Cleveland is an interesting defense to have to go up against because they get after the quarterback with consistency. Jim Schwartz has done a terrific job turning around this defense and making them super formidable. But at the end of the day, I think San Francisco is going to be a little bit too much. Cleveland's going to struggle to move the ball in a vast, throughout the duration of this game. That's why I have so much confidence in the 49ers.
Roughly a year ago, Christian McCaffrey was traded from Carolina to San Francisco. Since then, he has 13 rushing touchdowns, more in the air as well. He's been really fantastic, averaging about 5 yards per carry in his tenure with the Niners. Pretty much everything you could have asked for from getting him a year ago as they did. So they're a really good football team top to bottom, and they're going to be tough to beat all year long. Let's jump into our next one. We see a matchup here between the New Orleans Saints and the Houston Texans. And Austin, I was kind of interested to see which way you went on this. You went with New Orleans. I go with Houston here, and it takes 2 letters for me. CJ. CJ Stroud has been marvelous so far in the NFL. Now, listen, there's going to be some ups and downs with a rookie quarterback. We just know that. But I think so far through the first 5 weeks of the season, I think we can feel very, very confident with the type of player he's growing into and becoming, and the type of player that I think he's going to be for quite a while in this league. Houston fans, I know how excited you guys are about CJ Stroud. You also have some other nice pieces. Will Anderson, he's been really good at times. Tank Dell's obviously had a pretty nice rookie year. Nico Collins has made some plays. I just like the Texans and kind of what they've put together here in a short span, especially with D'Amico Ryans as the head coach. Austin, what do you like here about New Orleans as they go on the road to try and get a win here?
So something that I've noticed with the change of the New Orleans Saints offense has been Alvin Kamara being reinserted into the lineup. He's such a threat still in the passing game. That's actually why I gave the Saints an edge here. This is a defense that's only allowing 15 points per game. And I think this defense is going to give CJ Stroud a little bit of fits. CJ Stroud has been tremendous so far, and we cannot speak enough volumes about how well he's played to this point in the season. But the New Orleans Saints are in a position here. They have to go on the road and try to beat Houston, but I'm not so sure that I've completely given up on the Saints. There's some weeks in pick'em here. Like last week, I doubted them going against New England on the road, and they just played lights out football. So hopefully that carries over for them and they're able to explode again offensively.
This is a really important game for them. They're facing a sub 500 Texans team. There are currently 3 teams in the NFC South that have 3 or more wins. So the Saints, they need to go out and get another one here, push themselves up to 4 wins to keep themselves competitive with both the Buccaneers and the Falcons. And this is going to be a really good opportunity for them to do so. Into our next matchup, we see a game here. Well, this is my favorite time of the video, guys. Indianapolis Colts, Jacksonville Jaguars. We know who owns this matchup. The Colts, they can't beat Jacksonville. Look, credit the Colts. Shane Steichen's a great hire. I like what the Colts are doing. Okay, I think they're making really great decisions. I think that they've got a lot of talent there. They just don't have Jacksonville talent, Austin. Let's ask Buffalo how that went for them a week ago. Yeah, I think the Jaguars are just a really great football team. They're coming off of, now listen, they got to travel here back home 2 weeks in a row in London. Maybe they'll be a little jet lagged. I've never seen jet lag affect a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars. The talent's too immense. They're going to win this game at least by 11 points, not even just 2 scores. 2 touchdowns is going to be the margin of victory here in this one. Jags win. Indy, you guys know I have a lot of love for you. I love Tyrese Halliburton. Football-wise, though, you guys just aren't quite Jacksonville. Austin, take it away here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Indy fans, that you have to listen to this guy actually talk about this game because he's just so delusional constantly. I'll give him his props from last week. I just ripped into him for picking the Jags, and they somehow snuck out of there with a victory, very fluky win for Jacksonville. I don't have that much confidence in this pick because if we remember the first time that these two played. Very close game, and I felt that Jacksonville, I don't know if they're going to for sure pull this out. The first time around, it was tough. I think, honestly, if we see some Gardner Minshew in this one, that could be interesting. He maybe rocks the world here. And let's think about Jacksonville. They are not strangers to dropping some random games in division. It's happened over the totality of the franchise's history. And I think extending back to Houston, which you remember they got smoked by Houston. But once again, I get called the AFC South fan. It's interesting because you love the Texans and you love the Jags. I'm surprised you haven't come around on the Colts just yet. That's coming yet.
I was looking at Christmas gifts here for Austin, and I was looking at AFC South hats. That's how big of an AFC South fan he is. I'm just surprised he didn't have Jaguars and Colts as both winners here, or maybe his own name in there as a winner getting to watch this football game. But we'll have to see how this one plays out. I know the Jags are winning already. You can say I'm from the future, or I just know football. Most comments disagree with that second take, but that's okay. Let's jump forward into the next one now. We see a matchup here between the Carolina Panthers and the Miami Dolphins. And listen, the only team with a worse record this year than me and Pick'em is the Carolina Panthers. They're 0-5. I've at least gotten something right this year. The Panthers haven't. Frank Reich this week was talking about, the owner's involvement in decisions. And, I don't know if you're the owner, how much involvement you want to be tagged with when your team doesn't win a football game, but there's clearly been a lot of it. I saw someone saying, well, maybe that's Frank Reich saying he didn't want Bryce Young to be his franchise quarterback. Perhaps. Who knows? I'm not going to speculate too much on that. What I'm going to focus on here is the Miami Dolphins beating the Carolina Panthers. They're just a way better team. Tyreek Hill set the record this year for fastest player or play in a game at over 22 miles an hour. This team is predicated on speed. Carolina, I just see it tough for them to keep up in this one. Fittingly, Austin, how big of a win is this for Miami? And what do you kind of expect in this one?
I see this being a 3-touchdown, deficit here that the Panthers are going to face almost immediately in the game. And I don't have a ton of confidence. And maybe this is going to be the case of Miami overlooks Carolina a little bit. We've seen that happen before in matchups that should be a blowout, but maybe they were able to string together some drives here. I think, Bryce Young has a lot of learning to do. This offense definitely is talent deficient in some specific areas. I like some of the pieces that they have. They were trying to be competitive in some form this year, but that's just not going to be the case. I think the Miami Dolphins are just going to be way too much for the Panthers to handle defensively. And moving forward here, the Dolphins are scary every week that they go out there. They have the best passing attack and best rushing attack by the numbers.
The Panthers have been outscored by 53 points this year. That is third most in the NFL, only behind the New York Giants and New England Patriots. Not really stats you want to be behind those two in at this point, but it'll be an uphill battle for sure for Carolina. Our next matchup now features those New England Patriots and the Las Vegas Raiders. So here's the thing. Sheldon here's a terrible stat about the Patriots, says, oh my gosh, this team can't score. They can't buy a single first down. Mac Jones gets benched during back-to-back games. So what does he do in Pick'em? He goes and picks them, because that's how you find yourself in a little bit of an 8-game hole here by week 5 of Pick'em. But that's what I'm doing. I like New England, and the reason why I think Bill Belichick's not going to let himself lose to Josh McDaniels. I think there's going to be a little bit of that, like, hey, I better show up here and get a win for our football team, especially against a former assistant coach. And I'm kind of taking some of the off the field, off the stat sheet type of approach to this of, look, Patriots really badly need a win. They've not been playing good football the last couple of weeks. And I think it's a pretty meaningful win as well if they get this one against Vegas and against Jimmy Garoppolo. There's just a lot of kind of components that play into this here. Austin, for you, went with Vegas at home. Kind of feels like the safer, smarter pick as per usual for you. Why'd you go with them?
I just think it's the product of what I had seen the last couple of weeks from the Patriots. Their offense is abysmal. They can't move the ball. There's turnovers. They just aren't chain movers on this team. And I don't think they have enough talent to overcome that. Now, I do like the point of Bill Belichick versus Josh McDaniels. Bill Belichick is probably going to win the X's and O's game potentially, but I think the talent deficiency that they have on offense is way too hard to overcome. They can't move the rock, but maybe I have had a lot of issues picking the Patriots the last 2 years. So I think once again, we're probably set up for a prime Patriots victory. Make me look stupid, but I'm okay with that. I accept that now. So at the end of the day, I take the Raiders for the first time, in a long time. So this is unfamiliar territory for me. But once again, I had a bad week of pick'em last week, and I feel like I'm trying to stop a very, very big rolling stone that's going down the side of Mount Everest that I'm trying to stop. The pick'em seems to be slipping just a little bit.
Someone take a screenshot. I swear this is the first time since Jamarcus Russell was a Raider that Austin picked the Raiders in a pick'em week. But this is the thing, when you do pick'em like this, you can have all of these great reasons, and at the end of the day, the score starts 0-0, and it really comes down to what happens in those 60 minutes. And the Patriots just might outplay the Raiders, but the Raiders might outplay the Patriots here. And I think this is kind of a cloudy matchup. I don't think we really love either team at this point. So you kind of have to pick and choose what you're going to pull here. And for me, I went with the coaching matchup. Let's jump into our next one now. We see a matchup here between the Detroit Lions as they head into Tampa to take on the Buccaneers. And look, the Buccaneers coming off a bye week, they're 3-1, playing really good football this year. Just tough for them. The Detroit Lions are playing better football. They're 4-1. Austin, I feel like for a year and a half, you and I have been highlighting the future of the Detroit Lions and how good this team was going to become. We had the luxury of watching them in person last year. We're hoping to see them again this year in person. They're just a really talented football team, top to bottom, and they're just playing great football. I think that they're top 5 right now in the NFL power rankings that the NFL itself shares on social media. I mean, there's a lot of respect for Detroit league-wide right now, as there should be. What's your thoughts on the Lions and kind of how they've played, and why do you favor them in this one?
Yeah, I mean, they looked at the offseason and said we have to improve the front seven, which they went ahead and did that, made some huge additions to this defense in general. This offense is just super good, and picking off where they had left last season, Ben Johnson being retained was probably the most vital part of their entire offseason. He had gotten some head coaching looks, ends up opting to stay with the Detroit Lions until the right opportunity comes with him for the future. I don't think he makes it past this season or this upcoming season. He will likely be a head coach somewhere, and I'm going to make that bold proclamation right now. In the matchup itself, though, Tampa Bay has surprised us. I think they've played above what they actually are, but at the end of the day, they are doing all the things right in order to win football games, the little things, which is something that's kind of surprising. Attention to detail has not been the MO, for Todd Bowles, historically speaking. And that's not to rip him. It's just like from what we've seen from him as a coach extending back to the New York Jets days, this is not a coach I had a ton of confidence in. We thought it was a lot of Bruce Arians led, where they had been. A lot of the success was predicated on that. But to me, Tampa Bay has surprised all of us for sure.
Yeah, I think the big thing for them is that they're going to win this utilizing a guy like their talented wide receivers. They've got to find a way to get them in space, get them some opportunities down the field. And I think it will be a fun matchup, but ultimately I think Detroit is the one that pulls it out here. Let's jump into our next game. We look at a matchup here between the Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams. And look, the Cardinals, they've been kind of sneaky this year. They, obviously had the upset win over Dallas, who, after this most recent week, I think people are a little bit lower on Dallas, but still it's a good win for Arizona. And they've been competitive in games, which I think coming into the year, you and I weren't as sure they would be competitive. At this point, they're not projected to have the number 1 pick, which I think a lot of people were kind of suspecting coming into the year. So, they've played good football, but for the Rams, they get Cooper Kupp back this past week. Puka Nacua still does his thing, and they've got 2 guys here who in fantasy are going to be able to put up fantasy points, especially in PPR leagues. But outside of that, they've got guys who can move the chains. They've got, I think, more of a functional offense than we saw a year ago, and just gives us a lot more confidence in the Rams, I believe. Austin, what do you kind of like here for them? And is this just kind of a home game, divisional game against a team that probably is worse than them on paper?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, the Rams are a superior team. The Cardinals have one of the worst rosters in the entire NFL by design, so it's not really shocking. Now, looking at them, they're in every game seemingly. They play close, and we have to give a ton of props to the organization and the coaching staff that they currently have in place. But at the end of the day, stopping the receiving tandem of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua is incredible. It's so tough to game plan against these two premier wide receivers in the NFL. And a surprising run game from Kyren Williams, which a lot of people were kind of surprised when he basically won the job over versus Cam Akers, who had struggled. So to me, this offense is good. The play action game is tough to stop, tough to beat. And I think this defense is opportunistic enough where we could see some turnovers.
Our next matchup here, we dive into a game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Jets. And listen, I raved about the San Francisco 49ers just a couple of minutes ago. The Philadelphia Eagles are just as good as advertised, and we've talked about that for a long time here on the channel too, Austin, extending past just last season. The writing was on the wall that this Eagles team was going to continue to be dominant and going to be dominant for quite a while with the age of their roster, the talented players that they have. They're just really well set up right now. And look, the Jets have had some nice wins, got a nice win over the Denver Broncos. And there's been a lot of rumors about them potentially going after a guy like Kirk Cousins, which I do think as a Jets fan, they should go do. With the defense that they have, some of the skill players they have, they need to invest in the quarterback spot with Rodgers out for the year. I would love to go get a guy like Kirk Cousins if possible. But it's just tough to kind of see that type of move even helping them in this game against a 5-0 Eagles team that's really, really good. And it kind of comes to mind the Josh Freeman to the Minnesota Vikings way back in the day. Having a quarterback come in, try and learn the playbook in 1 week, get that timing, chemistry down. It's just a lot to ask. Probably won't impact this game this week, even if they do get Kirk Cousins. Just given kind of the little logistical things that come into that. Austin, first of all, for the Jets, what do you think that they should do at the quarterback spot for the remainder of the season, and then kind of your thoughts on the game here?
I think when you look at the New York Jets, they are in desperate need of a guy that elevates the ceiling. Kirk Cousins does that. This is a good offensive line to play behind, in my opinion. And when you look at the Jets, they're basically, once again, a quarterback away. We continue to say that every single year over the last 2 years, but Kirk Cousins is going to come with a lofty price tag, all things considered, him even in his final contract year. But let's not forget about the idea of a comp pick. So if they do decide to potentially move a second round pick, or however you want to look at it for them, which, to them, they'd probably try to move a third, they could end up getting that comp pick back. So I'm just kind of curious to see how the Jets want to play this out. But to me, this Eagles team is going to be too much. Their offense is too good. Their defense is too good. They're just a great team on paper when you look at it. And I think matchup-wise, they match up very, very well, even against this Jets defense.
Yeah, they're starting to kind of find their rhythm. Got Dallas Goedert involved this past week through the air a bit, something that Eagles fans definitely wanted to see. So credit to them. They're going to continue winning. Tough matchup for the Jets here, and I think the Eagles move to 6-0. Jumping into our next matchup here, and it's Monday Night Football. Super excited for this one, and I think it's a pretty fun matchup. Dallas Cowboys at Los Angeles Chargers. And I'm actually going with the home team here. Now, listen, I know the Chargers typically don't have the best home field crowd, home field advantage, but I still think, with an extra day here going into Monday night, it gives the Cowboys a little bit of time to maybe get this last loss out of their mindset a little bit. But for me, I do kind of like what the Chargers have in terms of trying to match up here. Obviously, you've got a big, strong quarterback like Justin Herbert. That goes a long way. But they've also got wide receivers who can win quickly and early. And I think Keenan Allen did that a lot, not only this season, but throughout his career so far. And I think he's a guy that he might be a nice weapon for them against the Cowboys this week. Of course, no Trayvon Diggs still. You're looking at trying to get the ball out of Herbert's hands quickly, and I think they have the skill players to do that. Eckler out of the backfield, of course, we know how vital he is in the passing game. And for me, for that reason, I think the Chargers win a very close one here, and kind of puts a little bit of a nail in the Cowboys season pretty early on. It's tough to say that, but just kind of given their injuries and how the year's played out as of late, I just don't trust Dak Prescott. He costly turnovers. You knew they were coming against the 49ers. We talked about it last week. I can't trust him. I can't. So for that reason, I'm going with the Chargers. Austin, you went with the Cowboys. I understand the reasoning here. Break it down.
Yeah, this was once again a coin flip for me, not because the Chargers being at home, but it's the idea that I trust Justin Herbert in big games. I absolutely do. He's so good at delivering the football on time, on target, and also creating those explosive plays, which is super vital to being one of the top tier teams in the AFC. But to me, I think that Dallas does have a really nice opportunity. The Chargers have struggled to defend against the run, and that's been blatantly obvious throughout the course of the season. And I think Tony Pollard should have a humongous game. That's going to be a major focus point for them moving forward in this game. So I think that they could get gashed on the ground. So I think this is kind of twofold. I think Dallas should have a much better game than they showed out against San Francisco. People are getting way too low, I think, on Dallas for that reason. But, once again, maybe I'm wrong here, but I do think the Cowboys can get the job done on the road. It's a coin flip game. So at the end of it, I don't know exactly how this is going to play out. But just from the matchups I'm seeing, them being able to run the football, Dallas has some blatantly obvious issues, but also the Chargers do too. And I know a lot of people are not happy with Brandon Staley right now. There's a lot of Charger fans even saying before the season started that we should fire him before week 1. So a lot of mixed feelings on this team, but the Chargers, I very possibly could keep rolling.
I'm excited for this matchup. I think it's going to be a really good one, and honestly, a really good week of games in general. We really do hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content. Again, we're over 1,000 subs. Thank you guys so much. Let's keep that number growing, though. Hit that notification bell, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports Plus video.